Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to the Yale School of Management session at the MBA Spotlight. My name is JJ and I'm your host. It's also my pleasure to introduce to you Chris. Chris is the Director of Admissions at Yale School of Management. So we'll begin with a quick overview of the Yale full-time MBA program, as well as other critical information you need to know to be successful in your application. And after the presentation, we'll open it up for Q&A and try as much as possible to take as many questions as we can. So, what we would really like for you to help us do is if you check the right side of your screen, you see different icons. There are several icons there, but the Q&A section is pretty much what we would like for you to focus on. That's where you drop all your questions and feel free to upvote any question you think should be asked. Feel free to ask any question you like as well. But for the chat section, please avoid there because we may not be able to get around to that. So again, Q&A is the only place you should drop your questions. So over to you, Chris.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I have two large screens. I'm looking to the right as you're telling me where you're seated right now. This is really, I love to see where everyone's located and how many places I've been to myself, which is, I think, all of them thus far. Here's Nigeria. I've been to Abuja, Sao Paulo, London this summer. So I love to travel. Thanks so much for tuning in. JJ, thanks so much for having me this morning. As mentioned, I will try to be brief. I will provide a general program overview, specifically calling out the three things about the Yale SOM MBA program that are unlike any other program. And then we'll talk a little bit about the application, just to, again, give you kind of a grounding in our program and a grounding in the unique aspects of our application, and then we'll take your questions. I hope to be a great resource to you and get to the Q&A as soon as possible. So thanks again for being here from Seoul. I've been to Seoul, okay, I haven't been to Mongolia. You got me on that one. Dubai, great. This is awesome. So let's get started. In talking about the Yale School of Management, it's important to start with our mission. And the founding mission of the school is to educate leaders for business and society. And this mission really does inform everything that we do, from how we approach teaching and learning to how our community is shaped. And I tend to say it's in our DNA. And if it wasn't, when a student came to the School of Management, they kind of get immersed in this idea of thinking broadly about issues. It becomes part of their awareness. So what does the mission mean? It means we really aim to develop leaders for all sectors and regions who think broadly about challenges. And we're facing increasingly complex challenges in our global business world, whether you're in healthcare or marketing or finance, you're an entrepreneur, you're in education. The environments are incredibly complex and dynamic. That's not going to get easier with a global economy, with political situations, with sustainability concerns, with the advance of technology changing the game. There's so many things to think about no matter where you sit in industry and no matter which sector you're touching. And so we've developed an education, an MBA education that we feel is the best way that we know now and how to prepare you for those really dynamic spaces and to not only be successful in your workplace, but have an impact that's positive beyond your workplace, an impact that's positive on society at large. Okay, so there are three things about the MBA program curriculum-wise that are unlike any other MBA program. I will touch on those very briefly. There's a lot to say, but I'll give you the bullets, right? First, our integration with our home institution. We believe we're the most integrated business school with its home institution, which of course for us is Yale University. I'll talk about why we think that's important. We believe we're the most global business school in the world. I'll talk to you a little bit about how we measure that and how we feel it adds value. And the third piece is we aim to be the best source of elevated leadership across regions and sectors. And that's really centered on our MBA core curriculum. So we'll talk about that. So starting with the integration with Yale, when you come to the Yale School of Management, you come to Yale University. And that's a connection that we feel you should leverage. Our MBA experience is strategically developed to create numerous opportunities for engagement across campus, giving you access to the sharpest minds in academia and the resources of a world-renowned institution. So the most tangible example I can give you of how we do this is the second year of your MBA curriculum at Yale. The second year of your MBA curriculum at Yale is all electives, and you choose. Not only do you choose electives from the School of Management, you can choose any course offered at Yale University. You don't have to make a pitch or a proposal or choose a track. You just register. What does this do for you? One, it allows you to craft and customize your curriculum. If you want to keep all your classes inside the School of Management, you can do that. There's plenty of choice, excellent professors, obviously. 30% of our MBA students do that. They take their electives at the School of Management. But 70% of our MBA students take us up on this offer to take electives across Yale University. And those electives can be in service of your career goals. They can be in service of expanding your personal network. They can be in service of taking a class you're just interested in. It could be a history course. It could be a language course. You choose. And so for us, we believe that this allows you to connect across campus and really craft and customize your curriculum, expand your network. And not only do MBA students have this opportunity, this is a Yale ethos. So the medical students, the law school students, the School of Jackson Global Affairs, they can all take classes in our building too. Everyone at Yale has this opportunity. So you get this kind of rich, what I call cross-pollination, where you're going to be seated next to people with different areas of expertise, different perspectives, not only in your MBA program, but it could be a doctor, a lawyer, someone who's in government that comes, even if you don't leave the School of Management, they're going to come to us and take classes. And that's just such a unique offering. There are other examples of our integration with Yale, but I'm going to keep moving on. I think that's probably the most prominent, easiest to talk about. Now, all business schools aim to teach global business, as they should, right? And some have developed a partnership with another school overseas, and that's great. But at Yale, the global offerings are unique and expansive, unlike any other business school. We actually were the first business school to require global study. And now we are the business school with the most offerings, again, diversity of offerings, in order to meet what we call the global studies requirement. And so a big driver of this expansion of our global course offerings is the Global Network for Advanced Management. So on this slide, you'll see there are 32 business schools across 6 different continents who have agreed to diffuse reciprocity. No exchange of money, we exchange resources, we open doors. And so that has really expanded our course offerings. So on this slide, you'll see that there are now 5 different ways in which you can take a global course, have a global experience. And each of these 5 ways or platforms have multiple offerings. So if you look at number 2, Global Network Week, what that offering is you can go to one of our 31 other partner schools on 6 different continents, and you can take a 1-week class in their business school with a global cohort, right? And they're teaching something that's in their wheelhouse, right? Something that for example, Fudan teaches doing business in China. That's the course they often offer. The Technion in Israel often teaches Startup Nation, tech and startup. There's classes in the Philippines, Brazil, London, you choose. Right. Those are offered 2 times a year for a week in October and a week in March. And usually during those weeks, there's about 15 or so schools offering courses. So just that alone, just option 2 on this slide, you'll have 30 to 40 classes to choose from each year. Another example I'll pull out is option 1, International Experience course. We lovingly refer to this as IE. This is a little bit more typical to what some of our partner schools, other schools do. Sorry, I shouldn't say partner, peer schools do. It's Yale faculty led, and it's you and your Yale peers going to a region of the world where you really get a boots on the ground immersive experience. So you have a semester long course, and you have this 1.5 to 2 week long trip in country meeting business leaders, government leaders, et cetera. Each year, there's about 6 to 8 different locations to choose from in that offering. So as you start adding this up, you get a sense for the selection, but also the diversity of options. Okay, and again, there's more to talk about, but I want to keep this relatively brief. The third thing about the Yale School of Management that's unlike any other schools, our core curriculum. It's how we teach and train, expand your capacity for leadership. So most business schools have a very similar business core curriculum. It's discipline based. They teach disciplines in silos. You have a finance class, an operations class, a marketing class. And at Yale, what we've decided to do years ago is to develop an integrated core curriculum. So we tackle multiple business disciplines in each course. Many of those classes are team taught by faculty with different areas of expertise. And so we feel this broadens your perspective and allows you to connect the dots across different areas and business disciplines, which is much more real world and facing some of the problems that you'll face and you are facing in the workplace. So these bubbles, these are our 10 core courses. So this is all delivered in the first year. We start with an orientation in management, which is kind of a grounding, typical business school kind of coursework, because many of our students didn't study business in undergrad. So the first quarter of your first year is that kind of grounding, get your feet wet. And then the rest of the year is delivered through these 10 core courses. And you'll see their perspectives based. So the investor, the executive, the customer, the workforce. So you put on the hat of that stakeholder and you study the content through that perspective. And what's really interesting here is, sometimes you'll talk about a case from the perspective of the investor. And the next hour or the next day, you'll talk about that same case from the perspective of the customer, right? The other thing, as mentioned, these classes are often team taught. And here's an example for sourcing and managing funds as a course. You're going to cover topics in finance, strategy, ops, and accounting, all in that one course. So this is the integration. Okay. So I hope that you're getting a sense for how Yale, through all three of these pieces, there's a common theme. Okay. Connection. Interconnectedness of things, right? So whether we're asking you and encouraging you to connect across the Yale campus, giving you connections and experiences across the globe, and giving you connections across business disciplines and stakeholder perspectives, there's a lot of integration. And again, we feel this is the best way we know how at this time to prepare you for a dynamic workforce. Before I talk about the application, do a quick time check here too. I think it's important to talk a bit about the community, and I'm going to keep this really light because I encourage you to reach out to our community and hear from them yourselves. But I've been at Yale for 10 years, and what I can tell you is I've observed a bright, ambitious, collaborative community of diverse individuals who really take an interest in each other's passions and pursuits. I think that's part of our identity. And I think it's something that draws people in who ultimately choose to come, is when they visit campus or they connect with community members, they get that sense that there's an investment in one another. I think that's unique, but that's something that I think as you visit schools and you connect with schools online, hopefully you'll tease that out yourself. There are many ways, and if you want to share some links, we certainly can, to engage with our community. We have student ambassadors, we have online events that are student-led, including our student conversations. I think there's one tonight where we don't have any admissions people on the event. We just put the students on the call and you go for it. No one's not recorded, no admissions people. So we try to give you access to our community directly. So look for those opportunities. Okay, and then this is my last slide, really. Actually, it's my second to last slide, and we'll take your questions. This is the application. These are the components and the dates. Most of this will look similar, familiar to you from some peer schools. There are a few things that are unique to Yale I just want to call out. On the right-hand column, you'll see video questions and behavioral assessment. Those are unique to Yale. Some schools use video questions, but different schools use it in different ways. For us, these two pieces, the video questions and behavioral assessment, they happen after you submit your application and the week after you submit. And the video questions are really at the core, they're a language assessment. We do not require a TOEFL or IELTS for our international students. Instead, we developed the video questions as a good kind of test in conjunction with the GMAT or GRE to really feel confident in your language ability to speak English. But also the video questions, we ask everyone to do them, including our domestic students, because they really add a more three-dimensional look at your application. And, it's kind of a nice kind of rounding out piece. But there's not a lot of weight. I'm going to tell you, don't stress out over them. There's not a lot of weight put in the video questions. It's really, truly kind of a deal. It could be a deal breaker if the language isn't there. But otherwise, people do really well, and you don't need to stress out too much about the video questions. The behavioral assessment is really interesting and unique to Yale, and I wish people talked more about it. At Yale, one of the things that we need to do as an admissions committee is feel confident you can do the work, that you're academically prepared to do the work at Yale. And all top business schools, this is a part of their process. They have to forecast, can you do the work? For us, we look at three things to make that assessment. One is your transcripts, right? Two is the test score. And three, which no one else, I think, has a third component, is the behavioral assessment. And what that is, it's a non-cognitive assessment of your inter and intrapersonal attributes. Okay. We know that standardized testing is not perfect. GMAT, GRE, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good indicator. Transcripts, we know in our internal research, have been more predictive of someone's success at Yale. But transcripts are not perfect either, because we all come from different starting points. We go to different schools. We study different things. Some of us had to work during school. Some of us had other responsibilities or considerations during their academic studies. So it's not perfect either, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good indicator. So we feel more information is better in helping predict how you'll do in the classroom. So if we see something in your transcripts and or on the test score that's a little soft, but otherwise we think this is a really strong candidate for various other reasons, we can then look to the behavioral assessment to say, okay, but is this the type of person who's going to get it done, right? Is this the type of person who's going to show up and have resilience and do the work, right? And so that's kind of what we're looking for in the behavioral assessment. I can talk more about how that's delivered if you'd like. And the last thing I'll talk about is the essay prompt, and then we'll take your questions. So at Yale, you only write one essay. Yay! Essay writing is a lot of work. And you really should craft individual essay questions for each school you're applying to. We ask you to write one, and you have these three choices. Describe the biggest commitment you've ever made, the community that's been most meaningful to you, or a challenge that you faced. We've expanded to give you options just to give people a little bit more room to work and share something that's meaningful to them. That's what we're looking for here. If you've committed to something, that was probably pretty meaningful to you. If you've engaged with the community deeply, that's probably a pretty meaningful thing. It's probably shaped you. Same thing with facing a significant challenge that has been a meaningful experience in your life. So that's what we're looking for. And how this is used in the assessment is not judging what was the commitment or the community of the challenge, but we're looking to see what are the actions and behaviors that you exhibited in support of that community or in face of that challenge, or when you committed to something, what were the decisions you made, the behaviors you took in support of that commitment? Because if we understand those actions and behaviors and decisions in your past, we can then say, okay, this is the type of person that if coming to Yale and committing to our community, what might that look like for this person? or if they're faced with a challenge at Yale or beyond, what might be some of the tools, and what might that look like for them in the future? So that's how it's used in our evaluation. It's not a creative writing exercise. It's not a fun facts thing. We really try to remove bias in our application and review. And so this is what we're looking for here, specifically actions and behaviors that you've exhibited in the past that you might exhibit in the future at Yale. Okay, so let me stop there. And if you have questions, we've run out of time. Our inbox email is on this slide. You can also reach out to me directly. My information is on the website on our contacts page. But let's pause here and take questions.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris. So I would start rolling out the questions now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Shashwat is asking, how is international acceptance rates in Yale? Is it the case that international students usually need more than average score?
So I don't know. I don't know the international acceptance rate at Yale. And, acceptance rates, they're not really helpful, to be honest. As an example, our acceptance rate in round 1 is a little bit higher than round 2. But it's not because we prefer round 1 candidates. It's because as a pool, the round 1 applicants as a pool tend to be a little bit stronger. I don't know, maybe it's because they've been preparing their applications. They feel confident, ready to go. They've taken the test a couple of times. They've been doing their research. They tend to be, as a group, a little bit stronger. Round 2 is a bit more diverse. It's twice the size of round 1. And some people are coming in hot, right? Some people are just like, the candidate I described. They're ready, they're confident, they've been doing this for a while, they've been preparing. So as a pool, it's just a little bit softer than round 1, and therefore the admit rate is a little softer, right? And then you have round 3. And so there are various reasons why admit rates are really just not helpful to you. I think the question is more centered on, I'm an international student, do I have to be more, right? Or I'm from a certain demographic or citizenship, do I have to be more? Do I have to have a better score? Do I have to have better? Is it more competitive for me? And I will say this, and I get this question a lot. The admitted class is highly reflective of the applicant pool. So for example, most of our international applications come from India and China. In our admitted class, most of our international students are from India and China, right? So we really look at each individual holistically. What do you bring to the table? We don't have admissions officers who own a region like some schools. For example, I don't own India. I don't just travel there and just read India. I don't own finance people, right? All 13 of us read all regions, all industries. We try to remove biases, and we look at who you are. What is your trajectory been? Are you academically prepared? Do you bring professional impact? Have you had a positive impact, good impact at work? And what type of community member you would be? And that's the measure, right? Regardless of, what company you work for, what country you come from, etc. So don't stress out too much about the class profile. I think the class profile is not super helpful. A lot of people will go and see, what's the average GMAT? How many students from my country? And it's going to drive you crazy. So identify the schools you're most interested in, put your best foot forward. Okay.
Great, thanks, Chris. So Sadi is asking, how do the scholarships vary from R1 to R2?
They don't really. They don't. We do have a slightly new approach to our scholarships this year. So this is a great question. The scholarships at Yale are merit-based. What does that mean? Merit-based means we as a scholarship committee try to assess how much value a candidate would bring to our classroom and our community. And the higher the value, the scholarships go out. Now, the truth is, a lot of people, more people than we can admit, are perfectly qualified to come to Yale, and we would love to have them. We have to make some difficult decisions on who we admit. Everyone we admit is probably worthy of scholarship, right? But we have difficult decisions to make. Upwards of 50% of our admitted students do receive scholarship. The minimum is $20,000 US. The maximum is a full ride. So what we'll do different this year, the scholarships are still merit-based, but how we'll approach it this year is we'll first admit the class. So in round one, we'll release decisions on December 5th. And then we'll ask, do any of you want to be considered for scholarship, right? Some people are sponsored, so they don't necessarily need a scholarship. So we're going to ask now. We hadn't asked before. Which of you, and I'm sure it will be many, would like to be considered for a scholarship? And then the second question essentially will be, is there any other context you haven't already provided in your application that you would like us to know as we consider scholarship? So it gives you an opportunity too, if there's something in your financial considerations, your life considerations that you think you'd like to share, you can share that as well. So we kind of internally call this Merit Plus. It's still merit-based, but we have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you should there be additional context before we issue the scholarships. Okay.
Great. So Vanika is asking, please do tell about the most common mistakes made during application or interview process.
Good question. During the application, there are a few things you could imagine, like not spell checking, right? Not reading instructions, following instructions. But I think the most helpful answer to you is actually one of my top tips is, at the end of the day at Yale, not all schools work the same way, but at Yale, we make decisions by committee. Every application gets 2 independent reviews from admissions officers, not alumni, not faculty, yearly trained. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been trained every year. And so when we come to committee, you have 2 people who represent you. They've read your file and they have things that they want to talk about to the committee and advocate for a decision. Give me all the information I need to represent you. So the biggest mistake that candidates make is don't tell me something. Like there's a gap in their resume and they don't tell me why. Or they're currently unemployed as of last month, but they don't tell me why. Or they flunked a couple classes senior year, but they don't tell me why. So I might want to advocate for you nonetheless, and maybe the other reader too. But when we're in committee, the rest of my committee members are going to say, well, he's not working anymore. Why did he leave his job? Did he get fired? And if the readers say, I don't know, but I think he's great, that's not going to hold water. So as you are completing your Yale or any application, think through all the information that's been asked of you and what your reader will have in their back pocket should they need to answer a question in committee, or give me the information I need to advocate for you. So I think the biggest mistake candidates make is just not telling me something, right? And oftentimes that's just context. It might be an extenuating circumstance, or just an explanation. I was sick. I was in the hospital. I missed the exam. I wasn't allowed to make it up. They failed me. But that's the situation. That's why you see the F. Just let me know that, and that's really helpful.
Great. So Vijayalakshmi is asking, what skill is given more weightage, leadership or managerial experience, or academics/GMAT score?
There's no weighting in our review. There's no formula in our admissions process. So some candidates are going to be stronger on the academic side. Some candidates are going to be stronger on the work experience side. Okay, and that's great. And both of those people can be admitted, right? So there's no weight. I think a lot of candidates, maybe it would be easier. Would it be fairer and better outcomes? I don't think so. Maybe it'd be easier if we gave points for academics, and we give different weight to professional work, and then we've kind of ran an algorithm, I'd probably be out of a job if that were the case. So there's no weight on an individual piece of the application. I'll say at Yale, there are 3 things that ground an application that we're trained to assess, in addition to all the other little pieces. But the big buckets are your academic preparedness. Again, for us, that's test scores, transcripts, and behavioral assessment. The second big bucket is your work experience. What have you been doing? What is your trajectory? What do your recommenders say? And the third thing is community. How would you be as a community member at Yale? What would you bring to the table as a community member? Those are the 3 things that really ground, and there's no weight tied to those. Oh, I think you're muted, but I can see the question.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Sid is asking, what would be a safe GMAT focus or GRE score range for an international student to get confident to apply to Yale?
Unfortunately, I wish, it would be easy, I guess, but it's just not that simple. There isn't a safe GMAT focus score. Again, we take a holistic view of your application. So some folks will have a soft test score, but they'll have an excellent transcript, right? Some will be soft on both, but they can still get admitted. So, again, we're looking at 3 big buckets plus other things that you bring to the table as a human, as a community member. So the best thing I can tell you here is just do your best, right? Do your best. It's worth taking the test twice if you can. Most students go, test better the second time. The other thing I can tell you that could be helpful is if you go to our class profile, we do give you the 80% ranges for our testing. So shoot for the 80% range, but know that people below that get admitted. So don't put too much strain and stress on yourself.
Great, thank you. So Shara is asking, how much weightage is placed on GPA and test scores in the applicant's profile? And are there any recommendation on other things that applicants can do to strengthen their candidacy? And it will be great if there is specific inspiring / encouraging stories or cases that you remember.
Yeah, I think I've answered the first question. I think a lot of you have questions around weight on GPA and test scores. So I think I've covered that. Any recommendations that I can offer? If you think your academic profile is soft or not reflective of your ability, you could consider taking a course. I mean, your transcripts you can't touch, right? You can study and take the test score again, and or if you think there's something in your transcripts that's a little soft, you could take a class. I think in taking a class before you apply, it's usually like a stats class or an econ class. I think what that does for you is a couple things. One, it signals you're serious. It signals that you're self-aware. You're serious, there's a little bit of like softness in your academic profile, and you're willing to put in the work to prove that you can do the work. I think that's just a good signal. If you choose to do that, make sure that for Yale, our advice is make sure you take a class where you get a grade. Just getting a certificate or saying you did it is not that helpful. It does signal that you care and you're taking steps, but it doesn't give us the proof you can do the work. So if you're going to take a class online at a community college, doesn't matter where, but get a grade, and that will be more helpful for sure than, like completing MBA math or something like that, which a lot of candidates do.
Great. So I think a lot of attendees seem to have questions around age and year of experience. So
Okay.
Gulu is asking, can age and year of experience negatively impact chances of acceptance for full-time MBA? So Gulu says, I mean, he or she is 23 years old plus 3 years work experience. So I think this question also applies to those who are older and have more years of experience.
Yeah, I'm happy to broaden this. So I've been to Baku. I love that city. It's been a long time, but I had one of those fabulous lunches of my life there. Thanks for tuning in. Age is not really a factor in our evaluation. We admit students, we actually have something called the Silver Scholars Program. It's for candidates coming right out of undergrad with no full-time work experience. It's a 3-year program for them with a year-long internship. But also say we take students with no years of work, and we take students into their 30s, I don't know, maybe 40s. I don't really keep tabs on the age. But what's important is in our evaluation, wherever you are in your career path, right, in your trajectory, we measure you for where you are, right? So if you're 2 years out of school, I'm not expecting you to look like someone with 10 years of work who's had 3 promotions, right? When I'm reading your recommendations, I'm expecting to hear strong out of the gates, right? The things you'd expect to hear from someone with 2 years of work experience. And it's also important to note we don't compare candidates to one another. We don't say, well, here's someone with 3 years of work, and here's someone with 8 years of work, and like, who do we want to take? We want someone with more work experience. We don't have those conversations. We make decisions on an individual case by committee on what are your strengths, what do you bring to the table, can you do the work, right? And it's exciting to have someone who's early career and has a strong start and is very promising. It's also exciting to have someone with deep work experience who can really provide some insight onto the experience that they've had and the network they've built and share that with our community. So we need the diversity. So there's really no advantage or disadvantage, really, and either outlier.
Great. So another question here. I think we have about 6 minutes more, so I'll just try and be quick now. So it says, for students passionate about entrepreneurship, what advice or resources does Yale offer to help balance academic responsibilities with the demands of building a venture?
Yes. If you're in Delhi or Mumbai, we'll be there next month. So in person. So check that out. This is a great question. And we've seen a lot of demand for entrepreneurial resources the past, 10 years that I've been at Yale. And so there are numerous resources. I think the first notable thing is within our core curriculum, we have a core MBA class focused on innovation and entrepreneurship, right? So whether you're an entrepreneur, meaning starting your own business, or whether you're entrepreneurial in your thinking, working within an organization, we think that's an important skill, right? And so I think we're the only MBA program with the entrepreneurship piece as a part of their core curriculum. In addition to that, we have within the School of Management the Honest Tea Entrepreneurship Suite. One of our alums and faculty members started the Honest Tea product and have endowed this space in our building where we have fellowships, we have elective courses, we have competitions, a lot of great activity going on there via Kyle Jensen, who joined us maybe 8 years ago or so from MIT. And that's just a really popular space with a lot of great resources. In addition, Yale University has what's called the Sci Center for Innovative Thinking. And this is a newly renovated space where entrepreneurs from across Yale convene and work on their ideas and their startups. And so those are a few quick examples of some of the resources for entrepreneurship at Yale.
All right, great. I think there was also a question regarding application fee waivers. So if you kindly share some insights on that.
Yeah, check out our website. So first, I think it's good to note that, I'll just share a link here. I think it's really good to note that we have a tiered application fee structure. It's based on your salary, right? So at most you would pay $250. And I think at least at the minimum is $125. So it's based on your salary. And we do that to try to make Yale more accessible for those with lower salaries. And if you click on the link that I provided in the chat, it's our FAQs page. There is a list of application fee waiver qualifications. Let's see, if you scroll under the what is the application fee? So the second line there, it tells you about our tiered fee structure, and then it also lists all the ways in which candidates get application fee waivers.
All right, great. So I think final question before we round up is scholarships. What are the scholarships available for international students and domestic students alike?
Yeah, we tackled that one. It's merit-based. Upwards of 50% of our students receive scholarship. And it's really grounded on our assessment of the value to add to our community and our classroom. This year, again, we're doing something different where you apply first, gain admission first, and then you share with us if you would like to be considered for scholarship. You fill out a very brief form and provide any additional information that you think is helpful that you may have not shared in your application when we think about funding. And then you'll receive your answer within days.
All right, great. So I think final comments from you, Chris.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for having me. And thanks to everyone for joining. You asked great questions. I encourage you to stick with us. We try to be a really helpful resource as an admissions committee. We try to be accessible and really transparent. I will share a link with you. I think one of the best events that we host is coming up on November 22nd. And it will be recorded. So if you can't or don't want to attend live, that's totally fine. Let me just give you the link here. I should have had this ready. It's called Inside the Application Literally. Here comes the link. Register for that. And what that is Laurel Grodman, our assistant dean, who creates our application and teaches all of us admissions committee members on how to evaluate candidates. She actually opens our application and walks you through why we ask what we ask and gives you some tips on what we're looking for and how you should complete the application. It's really, really helpful. She's really great. So if you haven't already registered, I would recommend that. And again, I just want to thank you for having me and thanks for tuning in. And I wish all of you the best.
Thank you very much, Chris. All right, everyone. So this concludes the session. Feel free to navigate to any other session you would like to join. Also, for those who asked questions, personal questions regarding their profile, whether you would like to get some free evaluation, I dropped the link in the chat as well. Or you can head over to GMAT Club, go to the tracker page, post any questions you have, and the in-house experts will be happy to provide answers and insights. All right, thank you very much. So have a good day, Chris.
Thanks. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye.